to meet him for the first time today, and I'm so grateful that Shared Thoughts have him on this panel. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big, big, big hand of applause for Mr. J.M. Benjamin.
She went over short, she did that. First I'd like to thank Alita and Miss Rita and all of the ladies from Shared Thoughts Book Club for having me. Basically, she gave you some of the particulars as to who I am today versus who I was years ago. I served over 12 years of my life in prison, and since then, it's been an uphill battle. I stand before you as a representative of the power of change. Over 6 years ago, I was sitting in a federal prison trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and a counselor, 60-plus-year-old Caucasian lady, she saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And I realized that often it's someone else who has to present something to you before you embrace it or receive it. And during this time that I was incarcerated, she encouraged me to just do some soul searching and some digging. And she gave me a journal and told me to write about my past because something in my past has me so angry and things of that nature. Needless to say, these pages turned out to be 400 plus pages of the journal, which ultimately became a manuscript. It wasn't my first published work, but it was something that unlocked the door for me to discover a new opportunity. I began a second piece of work after being encouraged by other inmates. And she brought me a book to teach me how to submit to publishing houses. And I got signed to a 2-book deal while I was incarcerated. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I was scheduled to come home like 4 months. And Wendy Williams was on WBLS at the time. She had a book club, the Wendy Williams Experience Book Club. And she picked up an urban fiction novel titled Down in the Dirty, and I was the author of that novel. Wow. And she contacted my publisher and invited me to come on the show for the book club. And when I shared my story, bookstores were like literally texting me while I was on the show saying that people were pouring into the stores, requesting this book and purchasing this book. I became an award winner. And just so many accolades and achievements and, accomplishments and door openers. But the ones that are dear to me the most are the ones when the schools begin to reach out to me in the juvenile facilities and the churches and things of that nature. And I don't know how much time I have, but I wrote a book titled From Incarceration to Incorporation: How to Use Incarceration as a Stepping Stone to Success. What this book is about, basically, is letting me know that there is life after incarceration, and it offers explanations as to why and how I made some of the choices, the poor choices and decisions that I made in life. And I just wanted to read 2 particular excerpts, one about my father, an experience with my father, and another experience with my mother. It was titled, Imagine This. It says, I remember the first time I had an up-close and personal encounter with drugs. Picture being an 11-year-old boy, watching your father from afar getting high. Then he becomes so paranoid from the drug that he places you and another sibling into a bathroom with a substantial amount of narcotics, where you're instructed to shove these drugs deep into the toilet and dispose of them if you hear a knock on the door. I clearly remember what I was feeling that day, as well as the look on my brother's face, as if it were happening while I'm sharing the story with you. A sense of responsibility and power mixed with fear and confusion filled my young body, and my brother's facial expression told me that he had felt the same. I remember us being amazed at the quantity of drugs in a large Ziploc bag. wondering the value of the package. We have saw similar pictures of drugs on television and in movies, and even empty vials scattered throughout the neighborhood. But we had never been in possession of drugs, nor did we intend to be. I can't say this incident was the turning point of my life as far as the path I would take a year later, but it definitely played a significant part in my decision making. The saddest thing about that day is that 23 years later, my father and I, who was also changed and turned his life around for the better, were having a conversation about where we came from, what we had gone through, and where we were today. In the midst of the conversation, I reflected back to that particular day in the bathroom. Needless to say, my father had no recollection of the incident. I found that to be ironic. Here it was. My father had done something so detrimental to me and my psyche in the past that it impacted and influenced me negatively as a child. And he was totally oblivious to the damage, placing me in the bathroom that they had done. I was sure that being a changed man himself, that the bathroom incident would be one of the things he regretted doing. That just goes to show you, when someone is so caught up in the streets and indulging in negative behavior, he or she will do things in the heat of the moment as a means of survival or financial gain, not realizing or even caring who is watching or who is affected by their actions. There was only one time that I can actually recall my father trying to step up to the plate to be the man I needed him to be after he had just been released from prison. I wanted to share that about my dad. He spent more than half of his life in prison. We have an excellent relationship now as men and as fathers. This section is titled Prison Life. This is a situation where my mother tried to reach out to me, and it was just so emotional for me that I couldn't even bear to look at her, let alone speak with her. It says, when I entered into the state prison, it was like a madhouse. It was the most educational, degrading, disrespectful time I've ever had to endure in my life. I literally felt like a caged animal. Only eventually, after getting caught up in the prison politics, I became just that. I want to speed up and take it to it says, there are many things made available to you for the betterment or the destruction of your life for when you return back to society and prison. Slowly but surely, during that time, I was trying to change. I had gotten caught up and sucked into the negativity that one could succumb to in prison and was now trying to find a way out. Nevertheless, I had worked on changing for the 6 years when I was in state, but deep inside, I knew I hadn't changed enough. When I entered the federal system, the reality of further changes I needed to make began to set in. My first family visit in federal prison, minus partitions, came when my mother flew in from Indianapolis to see me for my birthday. Prior to this visit, my mother had visited me in prison before, but now that there was no plexiglass partition to separate us, this visit was the most emotional visit the two of us had ever had. I'll never forget the look on my mother's eyes. For a minute, she just stared at me, and I remember her asking what was wrong. Was her response. I cannot do this anymore, son. This is it. This has to be it, she said, as tears began to spill out of her eyes, painting her face as they cascaded down her cheeks. In this very emotional moment, I realized just how much pain I was causing my mother, the very woman who brought me into this world. I felt so ashamed. Ashamed I had hurt my mother in some of the same ways my father had. It was hard for me to reach out and console my mother, knowing that I too had become the source of this pain. Because of the guilt I felt, it was hard for me to reach out to my mother for the first few months when I was transferred to federal prison. In many ways, the plexiglass that separated us in the state visitation room served as a buffer zone between me, her, and the pain I had caused. Now seeing my mother with nothing standing between us was very painful. My reckless lifestyle rash decisions, and lust for the streets had caused my mother so much hurt, and I didn't know how to tell her how truly sorry I was. My mother had always been there for me unconditionally, and had it not been for a letter she had written me, I don't think I would have known how to reach out to her while I remained in prison after returning. I remember the feeling, just feeling that I had let her down. As I sat in my room, I began to read the letter my mother had written me. The opening lines stood out to me as if I was reading them with 3D glasses on. Her first words opened up a spigot of tears to the point of almost making the letter unreadable. These were the words that had broken me down like a double-barrel shotgun. Dear son, I want you to know that no matter what, I will always be proud to have you as my child, and I will always love you. I still have that letter to this day as a reminder of what I put my mother through, my family, and my children. And I say that not to impress you, but to impress upon you that all of us in this room are God-fearing individuals. And it was because of my fear for my Lord that I was able to overcome these adversities, these struggles, and the bondage that I was in. So thank you for listening. You can look me up, J.M. Benjamin. My books are available wherever. My bookstores in Plainfield, New Jersey. You can ask anyone and they can point you in the direction. Thank you.
We are very honored that you joined us today, and I am proud of you. Brother, I am proud of you.